Di- Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir ishtirokchilari. Tadbirimizni 3 daqiqadan so'ng boshlaymiz. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we will begin in 3 minutes. Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we will begin. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin. Assalomu alaykum, xonimlar va janoblar, xalqaro va mahalliy hamkor tashkilot vakillari. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, honorable and distinguished guests, colleagues from different international and national organizations. It's our distinct pleasure to welcome all of you to Education Sector Coordination Local Education Group meeting organized by the Ministry of Public Education of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Global Partnership for Education Fund, and UNICEF Uzbekistan Office. I would like to extend, on behalf of the Ministry of Public Education, our sincerest gratitude for your continued support and contributions to the betterment of the public education sector in our country. We are also deeply grateful for that you could fit this important event into your busy schedules and managed to make it, whether offline today here or online. Thank you. I strongly believe that today's event will pay off with such outcomes that will not only further enhance the bilateral relations between your respective organizations and the Ministry of Public Education, but also, in the end, bring about significant changes to the lives of many Uzbek students at local schools. As you may know, ladies and gentlemen, the joint efforts by the Ministry and the international partner donor organizations over the past years have begun yielding positive outcomes, which are manifest in all layers of public education sector. To continue such fruitful cooperation and carry out our future activities on a solid basis, we are all gathered today in this wonderful venue for the meeting under the following objectives. First, the Ministry of Public Education will outline a new vision and new directions of its development strategy for the years to come. And also, this meeting intends to familiarize partners with the new operating model and strategies of the Global Partnership for Education Fund, and to elaborate on the prospects and the areas of future close cooperation between the Ministry and international partner donor organizations. To appoint a new coordinating agency for education sector co-lead in Uzbekistan. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, today's meeting is going to be very decisive in terms of where we are now and where we're heading to. And now, without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Public Education, Honorable Baxtiyor Saidov Odilovich. Hurmatli xonimlar va janoblar, bugungi tadbirimizni ochib berish uchun hamda Xalq ta'limi vazirligining yangi rivojlanish strategiyasi yo'nalishlarini belgilab berish uchun so'z navbatini Xalq ta'limi vaziri hurmatli Baxtiyor Saidov Odilovichga bersak, barchangizdan e'tiboringizni monitorga qaratishingizni so'rab qolamiz. Thank you. Rahmat.
Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, I would like to take this floor in my native language. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli uchrashuv ishtirokchilari. Avvalambor taklifimizni rad etmay, bugungi uchrashuvga tashrif buyurganingiz uchun minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. O'zim topshiriqqa asosan Andijon viloyatida xizmat safarida bo'lib turibman. Biroq sizlar bilan g'oyibona bo'lsa ham ko'rishish imkoniyatidan bag'oyat xursandman. Bugungi imkoniyatdan foydalanib, O'zbekistonda ta'lim, ayniqsa maktab ta'limini rivojlantirish bo'yicha kelgusi yillar uchun strategik hamkorlik masalalarini muhokama qilib olish, kelgusi 3-5 yillik uchun xalq ta'limi tizimi oldida turgan dolzarb masalalar bilan o'rtoqlashishni reja qilganmiz. Zero barchaga yaxshi ayon, maktab ta'limidagi islohotlarni faqatgina hamjihatlik va hamkorlik orqali samarali tashkil etish mumkin. bugungi tahlikali zamonda O'zbekiston kabi rivojlanayotgan davlatning taraqqiyoti va kelajagi sifatli ta'lim bilan, kelajak avlod bilan bog'liq. O'zbekiston Respublikasi Prezidenti hurmatli Shavkat Mirziyoyev aytganlaridek, najot ta'limda. Shunday ekan, bundan buyon O'zbekistonda davlat siyosatining asosiy yo'nalishi faqat va faqat sifatli ta'lim tizimini shakllantirish hisoblanadi. Ta'lim sifatini, xususan sifatli maktab ta'limini tashkil etish bir qator muhim omillarga bog'liq ekanligini tushunib turibmiz. Aynan shu yo'nalishlar kelgusi 2-3 yilda e'tiborimizda bo'ladi. Birinchidan, maktabda ta'lim sifati eng avvalo shu maktabda ishlayotgan o'qituvchilar sifati va saviyasiga bog'liq. Zero ta'lim sifati o'qituvchi sifatdan yuqori bo'la olmaydi. Bugungi kunda respublika maktablarida 504 ming nafar o'qituvchilarimiz faoliyat yuritadi. Ularning 280 ming nafardan ortig'i, ya'ni 56% o'qituvchilarimizning salohiyati talab darajada emasligini bugun biz bilib turibmiz. Bu degani deyarli 3 millionga yaqin o'quvchi bolalarda yuqori malakali o'qituvchidan ta'lim olish imkoniyati mavjud emas. Shundan kelib chiqib, vazirlik birinchi galda maktablarda faoliyat yuritayotgan ustozlarimizning sifat tarkibini yaxshilash va ularning doimiy malakasini oshirish, ular uchun uzluksiz metodik yordam ko'rsatish tizimini joriy etish bo'yicha vazifalar belgilab olindi. Mazkur mas'uliyatli vazifani amalga oshirishda Xalq ta'limi vazirligi qoshidagi A.Avloniy nomidagi ilmiy tadqiqot institutiga katta ishonch va mas'uliyat yuklangan. Institut va hududlardagi 14 ta markaz bu yo'nalishdagi asosiy bo'g'in etib bugungi kunda belgilangan. Xabaringiz bor, 2020-yildan boshlab o'qituvchilar malakasini oshirish tizimi uzluksiz kasbiy rivojlantirish tizimiga transformatsiya bo'ldi. Endi o'qituvchilar doimiy o'z ustlarida ishlashlari hamda bilim va malakalarini oshirishlari talab etiladi. Shu bilan birga, o'qituvchi o'ziga qulay shaklda onlayn yoki an'anaviy istagan va qulay vaqtda, ya'ni yil davomida yoki yiliga bir hafta bo'lsa-da va xohlagan joyda malaka oshirish imkoniyati ham yaratildi. Endi o'qituvchi maxsus platforma orqali o'z bilimlarini diagnostika qiladi hamda aniqlangan bilimdagi bo'shliqlar asosida malaka oshiradi. Har bir o'qituvchining kasbiy rivojlanish dinamikasi platforma orqali doimiy monitoring qilib boriladi. Bir so'z bilan aytganda, o'qituvchilarni uzluksiz kasbiy rivojlantirishning mexanizmi va infrastrukturasi shakllantirildi. Masala faqat o'zingizlar bilasizlar, malaka oshirish hamda metodik yordam ko'rsatishning mazmuniy, ya'ni kontentida qoldi xolos. Aynan shu masalada xalqaro tashkilotlar va donorlar bilan hamkorlikni kuchaytirishimiz zarur deb hisoblaymiz. Zero bu yo'nalishda har doimgidan ko'ra ko'proq sizlarning yordamingizga muhtojmiz. Xususan, maktab uchun o'qitishning zamonaviy metodikalarini ishlab chiqish hamda xorijiy mutaxassislarni maqsadli malaka oshirish kurslari uchun kontent yaratish va dars berishga jalb qilish hozirgi o'ta dolzarb masalamizdir deb biz o'zimizga bir maqsad qo'yganmiz. O'zbekiston Respublikasining rahbari tomonidan ham Xalq ta'lim vazirligi oldiga matematika, fizika, kimyo, biologiya, axborot texnologiyalari fanlarini o'qitish va metodikalarni ishlab chiqish bo'yicha xorijdan shu sohaning eng yuqori malakali mutaxassislarni jalb etish vazifalari qo'yilgan. Ikkinchidan, imkoniyati cheklangan bolalar uchun ta'lim imkoniyatini kengaytirish, inklyuziyani kuchaytirish masalasidir. Tan olib aytish kerak, tizimdagi 86 ta maxsus maktablarda ta'lim berish va bolalarni hayotga tayyorlash sifati maqtanarli emas, afsuski. Oddiy maktablarda ham inklyuziya tamoyillariga asoslangan ta'lim berish to'g'ri yo'lga qo'yilgan deb bo'lmaydi. Maxsus maktablarda ta'lim tarbiya ishlarini takomillashtirish davlat rahbarining ham e'tiborida bo'lib turibdi. Birgina misol 2022-yil 18-aprelda qabul qilingan O'zbekiston Respublikasi Prezidentining qarori ko'zi ojiz bolalar ta'limini rivojlantirishga qaratilgan. Shu nuqtai nazardan maxsus ta'lim muassasalarining rahbar va pedagog xodimlarini o'qitish malakasini oshirish. Ya'ni ham o'qitamiz, ham malakasini oshirish. Oddiy umumiy o'rta maktablarning pedagoglarini esa alohida ehtiyojlarga ega bolalar bilan ishlashga o'rgatish va bu orqali inklyuziv ta'limni kengaytirishdir. Imkoniyati cheklangan bolalar muammosiz harakatlanishi va ta'lim olishi uchun maktablarda sharoitlar yaratish masalalari o'ta muhim hisoblanadi. Uchinchidan, oliy ma'lumotli pedagogik kadrlar tayyorlash tizimini tubdan yangilashni biz maqsad qilib qo'ydik. Pedagogik oliy ta'lim yo'nalishlariga talabgorlarning, ya'ni muallim bo'lishga talabgorlarning bu sohaga qiziqishi va moyilligi baholanmaydi. Tadqiqot natijalariga ko'ra, pedagogika universitetiga so'nggi 2 yilda qabul qilingan talabalarning 40% ga yaqini pedagogika oliy ta'lim muassasasining 5 ta tanlovdan 5-chi qilib tanlangani. Bu ularning pedagogik oliy ta'lim muassasasiga kirish eng so'nggi chora sifatida tanlovi ekanini bildiradi. Kadrlar o'qitiladigan dasturlar ham afsuski bugungi kunda ma'nan eskirgan. Aynan shu sababli hukumatning topshirig'iga asosan respublikadagi maktab o'qituvchilarini tayyorlaydigan eng katta universitet Xalq ta'limi vazirligi tasarrufiga o'tkazilmoqda. Xalq ta'limi vazirligi pedagogik oliy ta'limni isloh qilish topshirildi. Vazirlik aynan shu yo'nalishda ham xalqaro tashkilotlar bilan hamkorlik istiqbollarini ko'rmoqda. Bunda xususan pedagogik kadrlar tayyorlovchi yetakchi xorijiy universitetlar tajribasini o'rganish, xorijlik yetakchi mutaxassislarni maslahatchi sifatida jalb etish, fanlar kesimida xorijlik professor o'qituvchilarni universitetga jalb etish va universitetga ilmiy amaliy loyihalarni ajratish yo'nalishlari ko'zda tutilgan. 4-dan, maktablarning moddiy texnik bazasini talab darajasida yangilashimiz lozim. Maktablarda o'quvchilar nazariy bilimlarni amaliyotda qo'llash ko'nikmalarini shakllantirish uchun sharoitlarni yaxshilash o'ta dolzarb masaladir. Zamonaviy kompyuterlar bilan 30% ga yaqin maktablarni ta'minlash talab etiladi. Shuning uchun 3-4 koeffitsiyentda, ya'ni 3 barobar ko'proq o'quvchilar mavjud bo'lgan maktablarda ishlab kelayotgan 120 ta, ya'ni maktablarda biz buni ko'rib turibmiz. Ta'lim sifatini ko'tarish uchun avvalambor o'qituvchi va o'quvchiga sifatli ta'lim olish sharoitlarini yaratish lozim ekanligini biz bugun barchamiz yaxshi tushunib turibmiz. Hukumat tomonidan alohida reja asosida maktablarni ta'mirlash va jihozlash dasturlari belgilangan. Lekin hamkorlikda bu ishlarni amalga oshirsak, tezroq va sifatliroq natijaga erishamiz degan biz xulosaga keldik. Hurmatli hamkorlarimiz, aynan maktablarning moddiy texnik bazasini talab darajasida yangilash yo'nalishida quyidagi masalalarda sizlardan hamkorlik va qo'llab-quvvatlashni taklif etgan bo'lardik. Maktablarda hamda 14 ta malaka oshirish markazlarida STEM ta'limini joriy qilish maqsadida sharoitlarni yaratish. Maktablarni zamonaviy kompyuter sinflari bilan ta'minlash. Barkamol avlod maktablarining moddiy texnik bazasini mustahkamlash. Ya'ni bu yuqorida aytib o'tilgan ustuvor masalalardan tashqari o'quvchilarni kasbga yo'naltirish tizimini joriy qilishimiz kerak. Fanlar kesimida o'qituvchi va o'quvchilar bilim va ko'nikmalarini baholash uchun milliy baholash tizimini ishlab chiqishimiz. shuningdek zamonaviy va pedagog boshqaruv kadrlar zaxirasini shakllantirish kabi muhim masalalar keyingi 5 yil davomida Xalq ta'lim vazirligining alohida e'tiborida bo'lishini ta'kidlashimiz joiz. Hurmatli ishtirokchilar, barchangizga ma'lum, joriy yil boshida ilk bor maktablarni rivojlantirish milliy kengashi tashkil etildi. Bu kengashga bevosita O'zbekiston Respublikasi prezidenti rais bo'lganlari va maktab masalasiga alohida e'tibor qaratilayotganligi hamda bu yo'nalishda hamjihatlikda qiladigan ishlarimiz ko'p ekanligini tasdiqlaydi. Hozirgi kunda vazirlik tomonidan xalq ta'limini rivojlantirish va bu borada xalqaro tashkilotlar bilan hamkorlikning strategiyasi ustida ish boshlangan. Bu strategiyani ishlab chiqishda bugungi ishtirok etayotgan har bir hamkorimizni taklif qilmoqchimiz. Mazkur yo'nalishda birgalikda ishlarni jadallashtirishimiz va bu orqali bolalarimizni sifatli ta'lim bilan ta'minlashimiz kerak. Bunda yana qaytaraman, albatta bizning strategik hamkorlarimizni ko'magiga va yordamiga muhtojmiz. E'tiboringiz uchun katta rahmat.
Hurmatli vazirimizga davlat rahbarining topshiriqlari bilan xizmat safarida bo'lishlariga qaramasdan ushbu uchrashuvda ishtirok etganliklariga va Xalq ta'limi vazirligining yangi rivojlanish strategiyasi yo'nalishlarini belgilab berganliklari uchun chuqur minnatdorchiligimizni izhor etib qolamiz. Dear guests, before going into each organization's future plans with the ministry, I would like to remind you about the time allotted for each speaker, presenter. With huge respect to each organization, I would like to say that we value your precious time and want this meeting go as smooth as possible without any lengthy extensions. Therefore, if you don't mind, I will remind you about the given time for your speech and also question and answer sections following your presentations. Thank you for your understanding. Dear ladies and gentlemen, following the objective number 2 of today's event, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Hoa Trang-Ring-Rose, Country Team Lead of the Global Partnership in Education, Gpe. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, partners. It is really a great pleasure for me to be here today with you after a long, long time, because Uzbekistan is, particularly for me personally, has a long love story dating back 4 decades. So it's always a great pleasure to be here. But today I would like to speak about the Global Partnerships Education's new operating model and strategic direction. And as the Minister, His Excellency, has just said, we are looking forward to a new era, a new period where all together, all partners work together even more closely to support the government in its priority program. So let me quickly go through, just to as a reminder to all of us, there are new people, new partners, there are former partners who know GPE very well. So I'll go through it rather quickly. First of all, what is GPE? You know, sometimes we refer it to as a fund because GPE provides a lot of grants to all countries. We have about nearly 80 member countries that receive grants from the Global Partnership for Education. But GPE is a lot more than fund, than finance for education. It's a big thing, as we call it, a partnership, where all of us, all friends and colleagues who sit around this table are member of. We work together in a partnership in order to determine, prioritize our cooperation around the priorities that government have set under the government's leadership. So that is what GPE is about. And who are we? We have the membership from all partner countries, low income, lower middle income countries, such as Uzbekistan, donor countries, international organizations, development banks, private sectors, foundations, civil societies organizations, and teacher organizations. So we are very inclusive in terms of how we partner, how we work. And the modus operandi for GPE is working in partnership. It's not about individual organization. So it is always promoting a harmonized and aligned support from all partners, avoiding duplication, reducing the transaction costs so that we can leverage the resources, financial, human, and knowledge base from all partners to support the government's priorities. And in the coming years, we even increase further our support for capacity building and strengthen the government-led system. We are here today as the members of the local education group, and the local education group is the soul of GPE, is how GPE operates at the country level. GPE does not have the physical presence, no office in any country, but we work in partnerships, and that is why you are all member of GPE. When we talk about GPE, we're talking about all of us. It's not any one person. So I would like to, once again, one more is moving. Okay, so at the country level, one of the mechanisms to support the government to implement the program with the support of GPE is a coordinating agency that helps convening the and influencing, guiding the sector coordination, policy dialogue among all donors, all development partners, in order to have a harmonized policy dialogue so that we are not pulling in different directions. And UNICEF had been the coordinating agency, not just dealing with GPE fund. I want to remind you that the coordinating agency here, vis-a-vis GPE, has only a very small part. But the bigger part is the overall sector coordination, policy dialogue, strategic planning, development and monitoring. So the coordinating agency, we are all here. The member of the local education group determines how the dialogue, the education policy discourse is determined. Okay, and the coordinating agency facilitates this process. We also work through grant agent because GPE does not disburse funds directly to the country. We have to work through an agency. We call it grant agent, and any member of the development donors and development partners can be grant agent. So up to now, the World Bank has been the grant agent for many GPE supported programs, but any other organizations can step up to be the grant agent. I want to explain more later on about our new operating model, how this one fits in, this possibility fits in. Just again, as a reminder, how GPE has been partnering with Uzbekistan. For many of you, it's its own story, but for also many of you, maybe it's something new. So I just want to remind you that Uzbekistan has been a member of the Global Partnership for Education since 2014. And for the 5 years afterwards, $50 million of grant from GPE had been awarded to GPE, supporting general education, preschool education. And then in 2019, a further $10 million as a multiplier grant had been awarded to Uzbekistan to support preschool education, which was used to leverage another $50 million from the World Bank as credit. So together, all that funding is supporting preschool education in Uzbekistan. Those are the main grants, but GPE also provided various other smaller amounts to conduct the education sector analysis, developing the education sector plan. $400,000 is a very small amount, but this is just to facilitate the process, and UNICEF was a grant agent for this. The pilot funding for sector coordination that was awarded to the Ministry of Education, Public Education, and UNICEF again was acting as a grant agent to implement these activities. We also provided support during the COVID time to support countries to help children continue learning, develop a resilient education system. And UNICEF, again, globally is a grant agent for this global grant from GPE, which trickles down to country level as well, including Uzbekistan. Knowledge and information exchange, otherwise known as CICS, regional initiative. Uzbekistan is part of this regional program that was receiving the grant from GPE as well. So you could see that GPE has been trying to support the country's education agenda through different grant mechanisms. Now, moving forward, that was the history. What are we going to do in the next 5 years? So when the GPE board met last year and the year before, faced with the learning crisis aggravated by the pandemic, we were told by the ministers of education of member countries, donors, civil society organizations, that we need to change the way we work. We need to be bolder. We need to be non-conventional. We need to be disruptive. We need to really talk about and work towards system transformation, because without that, we cannot fundamentally transform the teaching and learning experience for many children. We need to move on from business as usual. So GPE now is adopting a system approach towards supporting countries. What is the difference between the system approach and sector approach? As you know, GPE has been supporting countries to develop education sector plan based on the analysis of the education sector. You may ask, are we moving away from this education sector plan approach? No, we do not move away from that. In many countries, education sector planning is the main mechanism for sector planning, and we support those countries to continue to do this, based on which our grant will support the priority areas. However, the system approach here that we promote is that we recognize that the education sector plan is a very good tool. It has it's typically typified the sector approach. It has a sector plan, budget planning, monitoring, and evaluation. The system approach that we promote has all of that those elements of the education sector plan approach, but also recognize the very intricate interrelations between different actors in the system, people like students, teachers, families, policymakers, processes like teaching and learning in the classroom, and inputs, textbooks, curriculum, school facilities, and so on. And often these actors work in different directions, pulling to different directions, and undermines the system-wide progress. And that's why we really need to look at how we could transform the system in such a way that these actors work together, go in one direction rather than in all different directions, and then undermining the overall progress. So on the screen, you will see the overall Gpe Strategic Framework for 2025. The goal is basically the goal. We support the Sustainable Development Goal 4 for quality education for every child. And how do we do that? We try to promote the partnership, leveraging the energy, resources, knowledge, and experience of all partners in order to support all the key priorities as determined by the government. For us, at the country level, the three key directions that we would prioritize is to strengthen the gender responsive planning and policy development, more coordinated action so that we could have a cumulative financing for education, both domestically and from other donors, in order to have transformative change and build the capacity of actors in this process. The priority areas looks familiar. You could see there's quite a number of areas. Why we have these 8 areas? access, learning, gender equality, inclusion, early learning, early childhood education, quality teaching, domestic financing, not just volume, but also equity and efficiency, how it's being used, and strong organizational capacity. These 8 areas are very, common to many countries where the areas have been identified, but we do recognize that the country-specific context will determine which areas each country will focus on. Yeah? The grant mechanism, how do we support countries with their transformative pathway? Now, in the new operating model, under the new strategy, we have 4 grant mechanisms. Previously, we basically have 2 main mechanisms. Now we have 4. System capacity grant is available throughout the cycle, can be accessed at any moment. It is driven by the need to strengthen the system transformation enabling factors. What are the enabling factors? There are 4 areas: gender responsive sector planning, policy development and monitoring, data and evidence, sector coordination, and domestic and financing for education. So these are the 4 areas. And there are many elements in these areas that can help or hinder the system transformation. And so the system capacity grant can be accessed to support any of these 4 areas. System transformation grant, one of the main grants of GPE. Unfortunately, Uzbekistan, as a lower middle income country, is not eligible for it. This grant mainly is for country where economically is lower income level. So Uzbekistan was eligible before 2014-19. That's why you got $50 million. It would have been more now, but thankfully, Uzbekistan now is right up there. So congratulations to all of you, because this is a good sign. I see this as a great sign. However, to compensate that, we have multiplier. It used to be only a very small amount. Last time it was $10 million for Uzbekistan. Now, in this new funding cycle, you will be eligible for $40 million. Now, the multiplier grant is meant to incentivize other donors additional funding. Okay, so how does it work? For example, a development partner, a development partner plans to have some program in the pipeline of $50 million. That would not be considered additional funding, but additional and complementary funding is this. When you hear about this possibility of GPE's multiplier, $40 million, you say, this is a good synergy. We will bring in more funding because of this GPE multiplier. So that additional amount that GPE multiplier can incentivize, that works. But the ratio is for $1 GPE dollar, other donors need to bring in $3. But for foundations, it's on 1-to-1. But imagine the big picture is this: $40 million from GPE, the country, Uzbekistan, will get $120 million. Now, I would like to underline one thing, and it's important in the context of Uzbekistan. This is not about only international funding, domestic source of funding as well. So please, policymakers in Uzbekistan, if you think there might be possibility somewhere in the closet somewhere that there might be additional funding that you don't know where to put yet, or you still deciding which sector is going to receive that funding, bring it to education. For $40 million, bring in $120 million, and the whole sector, education sector, would get $160 million. So domestic financing source is also qualified for this. So this is a big picture. I will not go into about how to apply for this, because at this forum, we we would not go into those details, but the technical working group of the local education group can work together, and our team from the GPE Secretariat will accompany you in this journey of grant application, concrete steps, how to go about it. But what I want to say is this: whatever the process that is needed for the grant application, representatives from your agencies will be part of it, because we work in a participatory partnership way. And so any decision has to be the result of the consultation and endorsement from you. Okay, the government may be deciding certain things, but it has to be with your consultation, with your agreement and endorsement. And that is why this forum is the most critical, is a lifeline for how GPE can work effectively at the country level. So to conclude, I would like to say once again that we rely on all of us. We're all members of GPE in order to make this happen and make it successful in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rose, for informing us about the core functions of GPE and the activities carried out under the support of GPE in Uzbekistan, and also for laying out GPE 2025 goal priority areas. I believe that GPE can be that liaison between the key players, donor organizations in Uzbekistan, to make sure that all the activities and projects that we are undertaking are aligned and under the same overarching aims. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the organization who has been supporting unconditionally the ministry and especially A.Avloniy Research Institute over the past years. Please join me to welcome Mr. Munir Mamadzadeh, the head of UNICEF Uzbekistan office. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I feel like a celebrity being introduced. Thank you so much. Your Excellency, Minister Saidov, distinguished guests, representatives of other education sector partners, development partners, it's my pleasure also to speak to you on this important subject, which we actually were discussing for some time already, on the importance of bringing everyone under one umbrella, where government will clearly articulate its vision, but also we as partners, and I don't want to call ourselves donors, but as partners, development partners, will clearly also provide all the possible technical support that is available for the ministry to succeed and achieve all the, I would say, ambitious but very important targets that the country has, that have been set up at the highest level. We are very grateful to see the personal commitment of the country leadership, but the entire government engagement in the subject, and actually the recognition that education is the driving force for sustainable development, human capital development, but for brighter future of Uzbekistan at large, which is critical. And I would like also to highlight that when we see so many crises around us happening, with COVID-19 still having impact of the situation in Ukraine, and all the many other crises we observe globally, to see Uzbekistan particularly paying attention to education and social sectors is very, I would say, pleasing, because we know that in such crises, usually social sector budgets are the ones to suffer first, while this is not the case in Uzbekistan, and we are sure that it wouldn't be in the future. I, of course, would like to appreciate the Minister of Public Education leadership, and I'm happy that Minister himself supported the idea of organizing this meeting, and I believe it will again set the foundation for our future more closer collaboration. Because since my arrival, I was feeling that there is still, we're trying to coordinate, we're interacting regularly, but there is certain level of fragmentation or parallel kind of coordination mechanisms available in the country. So hopefully today's meeting will help us to streamline and have a clear vision, but also clarity on what is the contribution of each and every one. Like Dr. Hoa mentioned, it is about the entire sector. It's not about projects. It's not about UNICEF. It's not about World Bank, Usaid, or any of us. It's about how we collectively support the government vision and help it to achieve the targets that we have ahead of us. And of course, there were many opportunities, as I mentioned, we met and discussed, but this meeting will be critical, we believe, in that sense. We, of course, as UNICEF, very impressed with the reform agenda in the government that I mentioned. There were also significant legal initiatives to improve enabling environment, I would say, and basis for education sector reform, including by the revision of the law on education, preschool education law, introducing new decrees and roadmaps, but also implementing new education sector plan, which is covering 2019-2023. And in that, I would like to mention also very good achievements that country is observing right now in broader terms in education sector, in terms of expanding preschool, which is again basis for the successful school education, but also in tertiary education we see significant progress. And we are happy to also hear, as His Excellency Minister mentioned, focus on the systemic issues and making sure that we don't forget about areas like Mr. Minister mentioned about teachers' competencies, also inclusiveness of education, which we are promoting in every country, including particularly in post-Soviet countries where inclusive education still has some challenges, but also some basic things, because when we talk about quality of education, of course, we cannot forget about school conditions. And when I talk about school conditions, it's not only availability of ICT equipment, but also its inclusiveness and having schools as a safe space for children to learn and grow, because without having non-violent environment in the schools, or without having inclusive infrastructure in the schools, or without having required equipment and hardware, and of course without having adequate water and sanitation and heating systems, we wouldn't be able to achieve any longer term education outcomes. And in that sense, of course, the emphasis also on the 21st century skill set is critical for us. And I know there are many partners that are working on the STEM related competencies, on expanding ICT related skills, but also looking at how we can narrow digital divide among children, but also among teaching staff. For the general secondary education level, as UNICEF, we're of course thankful for the opportunity and partnership with the government to support the development of new competency-based curriculum, textbooks and teaching learning materials, which aimed at preparing students for the life that's rapidly changing, as I mentioned, world, and focus on the formation of the new skills, with particular emphasis also on civic education, but also education for sustainable development. We also continue to provide full support to the ministry in carrying out these important initiatives in according with the government priorities. And for the next 2 years, we are planning to particularly strengthen our support and expand our support to teacher professional development, digitalization in education, and development of inclusive education, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to unpack all the specific intervention that UNICEF is having. I don't think it is the purpose of the engagement today, so that I don't take your time for all the work, particularly also maybe just to highlight the importance of working on data and evidence-based planning, education management information system, and quality assurance mechanisms, including through national assessment studies. But what I want to focus more is now to indicate what, in our opinion and in my personal opinion, should be the outcome of today's meeting. When I started my speech, I mentioned about some fragmentation, and I would like to maybe elaborate a bit on that, that there are number of existing groups or subgroups on education that are functioning in the country. And for effective coordination, we believe that there is a room for us to streamline and have a coherent approach in that area. We as UNICEF, we were coordinating education group in the implementation or design of the education sector plan, first education sector plan that was supported by Gpe as well, but also within United Nations system, within UN family, we have education subgroup that is led in partnership with UNESCO. We also know that recently the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade established a platform for development partner coordination, and they decided also to organize the education group as a part of this arrangement, and requested UNICEF to coordinate the group on behalf of development partners. And then we, of course, have this local education group that Dr. Ho has mentioned today. So my plea or request would be to see how we can bring all these different coordination mechanisms together and have a sector-wide approach for education, going away from different projects or initiatives or budgets or interventions, but having holistic view on what needs to be done in the country. And hopefully as a part of the one sector-wide coordination mechanism to be led by the government, we of course can have thematic or very specific task force groups or working groups where we can go into details of different programming, looking at the complementarity and how we can expand our partnership in a way that we reinforce and support government vision in the education. So I stop here and would like to thank you for your attention and looking forward to have a positive outcome of today's discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Mamadzadeh, thank you for your speech and thank you for elaborating on the current activities and future plans of UNICEF with the Ministry of Public Education. And on behalf of the Ministry of Public Education, A.Avloniy Research Institute would like to extend our sincerest gratitude for helping organize and arrange this meeting. Thank you, sir. And now I would like to give the floor to the organization that is committed to helping Uzbekistan maintain its reform momentum by allocating financial and technical support during 2022 and 2026, represented by Acting Country Manager of for Uzbekistan of World Bank, Mr. Rahimkhan Asangaziyev.
Thank you. Dear partners, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me and my colleague to be here and to discuss the government of Uzbekistan vision and its education strategy. I would like to thank the Ministry of Public Education, Global Partnership for Education, for organizing this important event for us. As far as the World Bank Group engagement is concerned, it is a critical year for the World Bank Group. So this year we are developing new country partnership framework for 22-26. So taking this opportunity, I would like to thank the Ministry of Public Education, Mr. Sharif Hojayev, for active participation in consultations that took place, over the several months. So the country partnership framework was underpinned by findings of our systematic country diagnostic. This document is public now. So we, in that document, tried to actually define the pathways for the country to accelerate economic growth and create jobs in the economy. So four pathways included a strong private sector. Second was, unlike in the past, we actually wanted the government, the state, to be more of an enabler in the economy rather than producer. The third pathway was investment in people. And the fourth pathway, which is also something we welcome because it is a new area and priority, sustainable and resilient future. These pathways actually allowed us to develop the country partnership framework, and I'm pleased to say that in consultation with the government, we actually made sure that our CPF is actually fully aligned with national development strategy of the country, and more importantly, in the previous presentation. It was mentioned that Uzbekistan is a lower middle income country, and we are pleased to support through this CPF the government ambitious objectives to reduce poverty by half by 2026 and actually reach the level of upper middle income country by 2030. We at the World Bank actually, very pleased to see that the government recognized the importance of actually investing in skills and education, and more importantly, I think identified the human capital development as one of the priority policy areas in the national development strategy. So from the World Bank side, we are actually quite active and engaged in several areas. So the early childhood development project is actually very important in our portfolio, and it focuses on access to early childhood. We are also, as was already mentioned, in terms of quality of learning environment, this is something that we would like to achieve through this project. And indeed, focus also and help the government to have in place a system to adequately measure education quality and actually have informed decision making. Second project also we have in our portfolio, and we rate it very successful. Modernizing higher education project we are implementing with the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, and also while actually focusing on relevance and learning environment of the selected higher education institution, we are also trying to actually strengthen through this project the higher education system managerial capacity. Apart from the investment project that we have in our portfolio, the important piece is actually advisory service and analytics. So with the Ministry of Public Education, we have actually worked successfully to analyze the to what extent education system actually improves human capital. So to say, also diagnostic. So the report actually presented the results also of the study, issues that the sector is facing, and more importantly, the action plan for the government to actually further modernize the system. And we are very pleased that this report was, actually very well. I mean, we had very productive consultation and discussion on this. So going forward, I think we will continue supporting the ministry, and we look forward to helping design intervention that will improve the quality of public education. Thank you for attention.
Mr. Asengizi, thank you very much for speaking about the World Bank's current projects. And I'm sure that they will all bring about positive outcomes. Thank you. We are today also joined by another organization supporting effective governance, inclusive, digital, and green growth in Uzbekistan. Here, now I'd like to welcome Akmal Rustamov, Project Manager of Coordination Sector Delegation of the European Union to Uzbekistan. Mr. Rustamov, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for inviting to this very important meeting. I think we've not met for some time already with the local education group, and it's very good opportunity to recap and also exchange some updates on the sector of education. Talking about the EU delegation in Uzbekistan, I'm representing, as recently as you know, we have launched a new multi-annual indicative program. And one of the areas that we are focusing, it's a digital green growth and skills development. Talking about public education sector, we are not really focusing on that in the next 7-year program. But I can proudly say that we have a current project with the Ministry of Public Education, which is already started, which is already going for 2 years, which started 2020. And we have some very good achievements under this project, which is implemented by the Innovation, Science and Technology Center under the Ministry of Public Education. So in terms of, I think I don't want to talk about some details, but this project is really helping the independent teachers associations to develop themselves and also help the teachers. We have now registered 13 associations of teachers, independent teachers. And this project was already extended for 12 months until the end of this year. And I hope this will continue in the future beyond the project. And we're discussing about some scaling up of the areas under this project. And I have my colleagues here, so I can probably give them floor to give very short details, if I may allow myself to do that. Maybe Sarwar can quickly say about project developments at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Akmal. The project aimed to help teachers to self-organize, to develop their capacity by themselves, and also to help each other. So as Akmal already said, we have helped to create 13 teachers association. Now, the first one was opened 2 years ago in June 2020, and 12 other organizations were opened this year. They are regional teachers associations, so they can help not only in state level, Republican level, but in the regional level. They can self-organize to develop themselves and help each other. We aim to organize the final conference this year, so it will be also a good opportunity to know more about the results of this very useful project. Thank you.
Sorry for giving you the floor just immediately, because I thought because it was a good opportunity to give the floor to our very close partner, and which is implementing this on daily basis. But we are looking forward to some future opportunities. Talking about our focus, it's more about vocational education and training area, and for the next 7 years, digitalization. In terms of the partnership with the public education sector, I think there are some opportunities that we can think about, some instruments that are not really part of the portfolio for the multi-annual educative program, but we have some instruments like a so-called EDHR project, which is now implemented by this public education ministry. It is the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, which is giving the grants to smaller projects up to 400, 500 euros by the amount. And we also have a so-called instrument called Civil Society and Local Authorities. This is also a grant program, which is announced globally, but we have a sector for, we have the allocations for Uzbekistan. So I would encourage that all organizations just keep an eye on our social media and also websites, where we can announce this kind of opportunities that can help provide grants for areas of education, especially on the primary education and also the public education sector. I don't have much to add, and thank you for your attention. I will be happy to bilaterally talk to you in terms of any kind of other cooperation opportunities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rustamov, for your speech and for elaborating on the key priority areas of EU and Uzbekistan and the prospects of cooperation with the Ministry of Public Education. And also, I guess our guests received very vital information about the current project you are undertaking with the ITSM Center under the Ministry of Public Education. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give the floor to the next organization, which is known as the Leaders in Promoting Education, Arts, Science, and Culture, not only in Uzbekistan, but also around the globe. Please welcome UNESCO Tashkent team, represented by Mr. Bakhtiyor Namozov, Education Program Specialist.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir ishtirokchilari, xonimlar va janoblar. Ushbu tadbirga taklif etganliklari uchun sizlarga kattakon rahmat UNESCO nomidan. Ijozatlaringiz bilan suhbatimiz ingliz tilida bo'layotganligi uchun men ham ingliz tilida davom ettirsam, taqdimotlarimiz ham ingliz tiliga tayyorlangan edi. Thank you very much for inviting UNESCO for this important meeting. As you know, UNESCO is a mandated organization of the United Nations on education. So we have a global role of coordinating entirety of the education system, from the preschool education, secondary education, general education, tertiary education, adult education, and from the throughout the lifelong learning perspective. And the UNESCO is the global lead for the Sustainable Development Goal number 4 on education. So from bearing from the mandate of UNESCO, we also elaborated national education sector transformation program that we are planning to implement for the next 2 years, with the participation of the 3 line ministries on education: Ministry of Preschool Education, Public Education, and Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, as well as under the overall coordination of the State Inspection on Quality Assurance in Education. So UNESCO's programmatic approach has 5 components. The first component, under the first component, we would like to review and enhance our national education concept, a curriculum, and methodological guides for teacher instructional materials at all levels of the education. With the focus on the enhancing the national educational standards, curriculum, focusing on inclusive education, as well as establishing the STEM laboratories for the Republican Education Center, A.Avloniy teacher training institutions. So when we talk about the STEM education, I think the primary goal is to this kind of curricular developers, methodological developing centers of the ministry should also have the similar equipment and laboratories in the future. For the preschool education, UNESCO is convening the World Conference on Early Childhood and Care and Education in category 2, where we're inviting 190 member states of UNESCO to Uzbekistan at the ministerial level, and we are kindly cooperating with the Ministry of Preschool Education. And thank you, Uzbekistan, for this collaboration with UNESCO. So with preschool education, we are thinking to help developing and enhancing the teaching instructional guide for İlk Qadam and İlm Yolu curriculum. I believe these curriculums were developed with the support of our UNICEF colleagues. So we will continue helping you in these areas as well. His Excellency Minister Saidov mentioned that the STEM education and social science and languages is a particular attention of the Ministry of Public Education. So we're going to look into the teacher instructional guides for the STEM subjects from 1 to 11. Grade levels, and we're going to look into the interdisciplinary integration of these subjects so that repetition and overlaps are eliminated. And we are planning to look into this activity with the cooperation of the State Inspectorate. And one of the proposal is if funding is multiplying funding is also available from GPE, we're thinking to expand the STEM schools in the public education sector, adding like a 100 school, equipping 100 school with STEM equipment. So this is the another area for the Ministry of Public Education. And we have a few activities with Tashkhis Markazi, as well as with ITSM, such as like enhancing the career guidance, and the soft skills and life skill development in the education sector, and plus introducing the gamification solutions in teaching and learning. So this is the basically on the curriculum type and soft component and the content wise approach. The second item is is enhancing the national assessment system at all levels, from primary up to higher education. So we're going to look into the existing national assessment system, and we can conduct a research and study to reflect international best practices on assessment, as well as large-scale assessment system like PISA, TIMSS, and PEARLS into the national curricula. Also, we're going to look into the formative and summative assessment indicators and methodologies so that this could be included into the classroom teaching already, and the teacher assessment as well. As well as we're going to look into the assessment standards for the capacity of teacher competencies. The third priority area is a digitalization of education provision at all levels. So this will include the development of the various learning management system, educational portal, creating digital teacher instructional guides from all levels of education. It's like developing the supplementary and online content, supporting with the establishment of the multimedia center with learning management system, operational management systems, as well as introducing the holistic education management information system, so that all three line ministries on education are combined and connected into one holistic overarching education management information system. And also we are thinking to help with the Ministry of Public Education with the development of the multimedia center and ICT software and hardware for the Republic Education Center. Fourth priority, we will be focusing on purely on teacher capacities, as again sector-wide. So we're gonna look into the enhancing the operationalizing the educational teacher education competency standards, competency framework, career guidance, competency assessment, including. We're gonna develop various teacher education models, courses, of course, focusing with the gender and education, as well as we're gonna enhance the infrastructure for inclusive education provision. As well as we help the Ministry of Public Education with engaging, inviting internationally promising expertise and staff, teachers, good teachers from the globally to come in Uzbekistan and teach in Uzbek schools. Also, one of the requests was this to help the government, especially Tashkhis Markazi, with psychological career guidance and standards development and assessment indicators for students. So this everything relates to teacher capacity building. And UNESCO, based on its mandate, will focus also on the research and foresight, empowering the countries with the research capacities. In this perspective, we will be closely working with A.Avloniy Research Institute, newly re-established institute, to enhance their capacities. We're going to develop the monographs, articles, and best practice in teaching and learning, and we're going to publish international journals, and we will partner with CSEC also on these research capacities. Also, with the Republican Education Center, we will cooperate with enhancing the Multiplier Maktabi, where this Multiplier Maktabi will be looking into the building the core of the textbook authors, curricular developers, not only in the general public education, but also from the inclusive education as well. So these are the basically 5 main directions that UNESCO will be supporting the ministries of education and the CSEC in the country. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Namazov, for outlining the future plans of UNESCO with the MOPI and detailing priority areas. I'm sure that the support of UNESCO will help accelerate achieving the overarching aims of the Ministry of Public Education. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the officials from an embassy that has always played a pivotal role in promoting education and English language learning in our country, represented by Ms. Sara Talalay, Cultural Affairs Officer. Please tune in for the future plans of U.S. Embassy in Uzbekistan in public education sector. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, ministry officials, esteemed guests, representatives of international organizations in Tashkent. I am delighted to be here this morning to talk about our enduring partnership with the Ministry of Public Education. As you may know, a meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2018 between our 2 countries' presidents led to a strong partnership in the field of education. The United States is committed to helping Uzbekistan reform its education system, which we know is a priority of your government, especially as Minister Saidov said this morning. Since 2019, we have collaborated with the ministry to place 15 Fulbright English teaching assistants. We call them ETAs for short. These are young, recent US college graduates who assist English teachers in classrooms and share American culture. The ministry has helped us place them at public schools throughout the country. Even during the pandemic, the ministry helped us bring these native speakers to Uzbekistan to improve English teaching and learning. Additionally, with our implementer, American Councils, thank you for being here today as well, we have been able to place English language specialists at regional training centers for secondary school teachers. We also have English language fellows who are educators who are placed at universities, and 18 English Access Micro Scholarship programs that provide intensive after-school English classes to secondary school students from economically disadvantaged families. Starting in 2020, several of these centers were placed in public schools. We just happened to be sending 26 of these access students to the United States this summer for a very special opportunity. They will be attending an English language camp at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. We also just announced applications for an English language camp that will be taking place in Uzbekistan in Samarkand at the Samarkand Institute for Foreign Languages, also for secondary school students. And last summer, we had nearly 30 English language educators here for a month conducting intensive teacher training. We hope to continue that program this summer with American Councils. The idea of an English-speaking nation was first uttered by the former Minister of Public Education. And under this umbrella of what we call ESN, we have developed a comprehensive, multifaceted program to boost English teaching skills and learning throughout the country. The ESN program involves George Mason University in the United States and the TESOL organization. For those who don't know, that's Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, to assist in English educational reforms in Uzbekistan. As you know, the goal of this project is to strengthen English language learning and modern teaching methodologies in Uzbekistan by improving the capacity of English language educators. Uzbekistan secondary education needs native speaker assistance to improve curriculum and teaching, and nothing beats the opportunity to learn from native speakers. We are in year 2 of this 3-year program. The train the trainer cascading model implemented under ESN will provide a long-lasting legacy for decades. It has produced nearly 100 core trainers and 850 regional peer mentors. In fact, right now, this morning, in classrooms across the country, these core trainers are training these peer mentors who will go on to work with 15,000 secondary school English teachers across the country. Let me repeat, 15,000, or nearly half of all secondary school teachers in Uzbekistan. Among the most gratifying things is seeing the enthusiasm and motivation among Uzbekistan's English teachers for this increased training. In yet another exciting development, Uzbekistan will host the first ever TESOL conference in Central Asia here in Tashkent, June 13 to 16. The embassy is looking forward to welcoming nearly 500 teachers from Uzbekistan and across Central Asia. American councils and TESOL International have already put out the call for proposals to attract teachers from across the region. So there's even more coming up in the education sphere to keep you busy here in Uzbekistan. We look forward to sending an invitation to the minister and hope that he will join us for the conference. We are also delighted to see how secondary school teachers are interested in our exchange programs and small grants. We have seen a record increase in the number of applicants for our exchange and professional development programs in the United States. Those who have been accepted into our online training programs are eager to take the next step to go to the United States for additional training. And those who return from the United States, from exchange programs in the United States, are further motivated to share what they've learned, and many have called these experiences life-changing. Our efforts to reform your education system are working. You should be proud of this collaboration. I know we are. Lastly, for now, we are expanding our American Corners program with the help of American councils. These centers are chock full of resources about the United States, information about study in the United States, which we know is important to the ministry. And they're a place where our ETAs and fellows and experts share their knowledge and culture. We have one in Karshi at the moment. There will be a grand opening for our already recently opened American Corner in Namangan next month. And we are expecting new corners in Samarkand, Bukhara, and more in the future. We are planning to place English language educators, native English speakers, again, I stress that point, at these American corners to provide even more opportunities for young people to learn and practice their English and learn about the United States. There is so much more, but I just wanted to share the highlights. I know our time is limited. Again, we are grateful for this partnership. The embassy looks forward to continuing this positive collaboration into the next academic year, when we will welcome another 16 ETAs and 7 English language fellows and more educators. Thank you for your attention. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talale, for first of all being with us today on this very important day and for sharing success stories and the future plans of the embassy with the Ministry of Public Education. And from our side, we also look forward to closely collaborating with the US Embassy in the near future. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, that there has been enormous amount of work and continuing successfully now when it comes to improving teaching and learning of English language at schools and upgrading curriculum and textbooks in 4 key areas such as EFL, ICT, math, Uzbek language and arts. To summarize all efforts along with setting path for future cooperation, I would like to pass the floor to USAID, RTI, American Councils in Uzbekistan team represented by Ms. Luan Grenhoft. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that introduction. That was very appropriate. My name is Luan Grenhoft. I'm the director of the Education Office at USAID Uzbekistan, but I am representing a partnership between not only us and the Ministry of Public Education, but us and our implementing partners, RTI and American Councils. There we go. So as Dr. Ringrose did this morning, I'm going to also just begin with a very brief introduction to USAID for anyone who may be hearing from us for the first time today. I'll go through that quickly, and then we'll use this time to talk about our current activities and planned activities over the coming few years. USAID has been providing support to Uzbekistan for many years, several decades, but primarily until just recently through a country office and regional support in Kazakhstan. However, in 2019, we launched a partnership with the Ministry of Public Education, which we are very proud of, committing $50 million over 50 years to the shared goal of improving the learning outcomes and skills of Uzbekistan's children and youth. USAID around the world, in fact, has a very focused approach to our work, which is defined by the extent to which children and youth in the countries where we engage and where we partner are improving their learning outcomes and their skills. We know that the success or the failure of our work and our partnerships is measured by the extent to which children and youth are really set up to reach their full potential and to contribute fully to their country's development. Here in Uzbekistan, where we see the closest alignment between our global priorities and the reform efforts of the Ministry of Public Education are in these areas listed here, with the focus on foundational skills, which includes literacy and numeracy. And here, as was mentioned, we're also working in ICT and English alongside our partners at the embassy. And we're working very closely, starting this year, on the issue of this huge youth population in Uzbekistan that presents such an opportunity to the country. Here you'll see very briefly our current activities as of this year and for the years to come. And I'll describe each of these briefly. So first of all, national early grade reading and math assessments. Also, our Uzbekistan Education for Excellence program, which is focused on the basic education system and implemented by RTI International, and our new youth workforce development and entrepreneurship activity implemented by our friends at American Councils. The National Early Grade Reading and Math Assessments are known to many of you, and USAID has partnered with countries, over 50 countries around the world over the last 15 years to learn about, to adapt to the local context, and to conduct these assessments with the goal of producing a reliable set of data baselines for the first time in many cases around the status of children's learning in numeracy and literacy. We are very proud to have been working closely with the Ministry of Public Education and our friends at REC over the last couple of years to adopt and pilot the early grade reading and math assessments for Uzbekistan. The first workshop in country was held to adapt these instruments in 2019. 21 ministry staff and Methodists were trained on survey administration. And following that training, the Ministry of Public Education teams were deployed to pilot these tools in 70 pilot schools in 6 provinces in preparation for the nationwide assessment. During 2020 and part of 2021, we held off on administering these assessments during the pandemic, but they were finally conducted in November and December of 2021 in almost 1,000 schools in Uzbekistan, assessing over 20,000 students in 7 local languages of instruction, as well as Uzbek as a second language. Just to say, as you'll see, or you saw on the previous slide, we put the timeline for this assessment as ending this year. But really, any time that you have data from a national assessment of this type, it should really be seen as a starting point, a stepping off point for much more reflection, discussion, and strategic dialogue around what this means. So we have a dissemination event planned with the ministry for next week, where we will be able to talk about for the first time some of the key findings from the assessments. And those reports will be available in English and Uzbek very soon, and we're happy to share them as widely as possible. And then the key following that is really for us as a partner community with the government of Uzbekistan to understand what that data tells us and how we adapt and strengthen our interventions to make sure that no child in Uzbekistan progresses through their education without these very important skills established in a way that helps them succeed in school and later in life as well. So next, I'll just talk very briefly about our Uzbekistan Education for Excellence program, which aims to improve the instruction of Uzbek language arts and math in the early grades of school, grade 1 to 4, and English as a foreign language and ICT in grades 5 to 11. And you'll see here listed the sort of key areas of intervention. I'll mention in terms of progress that along the lines of standards that we have collaborated with the ministry to develop student math and Uzbek language arts standards for grades 1 to 4, and ICT standards for grades 1 to 11, and EFL standards are forthcoming. We have engaged 150 or so education professionals to build their capacity also around standards review, as well as textbook development. Teaching and learning materials, of course, are critical to instruction in the classroom. And we've worked with the ministry to procure licenses from Cambridge University Press for grades 5 to 11 ICT and grades 1 to 11 EFL teacher guides, student textbooks, and workbooks, which have been distributed to classrooms in our 2 current pilot regions, which are Namangan and Sidaria.
1 minute, sorry.
No problem. We are accompanying our teaching, our investments in teaching and learning in, of course, accompaniment for teacher training. So that it involves continuous professional development and coaching, and also making available to teachers a digital resource platform. And there recapped are some of the points in terms of where we've made access, where we've made progress so far, and how we're looking forward. So let me jump then to our new youth workforce development activity. This is focused on grades 8 to 11, and the goal is really to equip these young people as they prepare to enter the workforce with the necessary knowledge and skills to be successful employees or entrepreneurs and employers themselves. It will be working in school and in after-school programs. We have an emphasis on girls and youth with disabilities. It will be very focused on practical and project-based learning, and includes necessarily close collaboration with the private sector. And here's my last slide, just recapping the major objectives under that program. Under objective 1, I'll say that we'll be looking at the entrepreneurship and economics curricula in grades 8 to 11, and testing improvements in that space. In terms of the after-school activities, we'll be working with the private sector again to pull their perspectives into how to make after-school activities most productive, and looking at soft skills, work readiness, skills, and employability skills with youth. And under objective 3, supporting change among youth participants, parents, teachers, mentors, and employers to create an environment that really, again, encourages and supports youth to be ready for the workforce. So that is very briefly where we are. And I'll just say that I'm heartened this morning by this opportunity for us to come together. I really applaud the ministry in making this meeting happen. And I would just second the comments of Munir from UNICEF this morning, that I think there's a lot of space for us to have more technical discussions around the areas where we see that we're all interested in investing. And from USAID, we would welcome the opportunity to engage in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grenhoft, for the brief introduction of the current USAID projects and activities going on in the sector of public education sector, and also for announcing this upcoming conference about the EGMA and EGRA results announcements. Very, very useful. Thank you very much, ma'am. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to make, with your permission, one exception. One of our guests have to arrive a little earlier than 12 o'clock today. Therefore, with your permission, I would like to bring forward Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, represented by Mr. Jamiluddin Tuni, Head of Tashkent Coordination Office.
Thank you. Thank you for providing me this privilege. Dear Excellency Minister Saidov, Deputy Minister Mr. Osman Hocayev, dear participants, I would like to thank you coming together and sharing the ideas. I'm the head of the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency office in Tashkent, here in functioning since the early days of independence, and having autonomous independent office since 1994. We are a development agency cooperating with the Uzbek government authorities and NGOs so far. Our work projects fields extend from the health to education to the vocational training, agriculture, industrial training, in every respect of development. So, so far, the education was the second largest area, largest number of projects after the health sector, which is almost 19% devoted to the education projects. Since 1994, we realized, implemented 161 projects. Actually, these projects mainly concentrated on the development of educational infrastructure of Uzbekistan, vocational training, exchange of expertise and experts, institutional capacity building that are providing equipments, smart boards, computer laboratories, language learning school, classes, so on, and also providing the expertise in curriculum development and design. Since these two brotherly countries having a long historical and a cultural affinity closeness, they have this similar trait in the development path. So our exchange of ideas is more beneficial. So the TICA is always promoting the exchange of expertise and experience so far, and we'd like to be beneficial to the development process of Uzbekistan. So today, again, in the year of 2022, we also have several educational projects which are extending from preschool to the high schools, including vocational training. So in the coming days, we will host a group of delegation from our Ministry of Education and our headquarters in Ankara to discuss curriculum design with the experts in the Ministry of Public Education and other institutions. We work on the basis of the proposal rise from the authorities, from the government, as well as NGOs. So we don't deliberately bring the proposal projects without any request from or demand from the host country. So we are always ready to discuss and eliminate the area of cooperation and the problem areas that to be tackled and project to be developed on those issue areas. So we are open to receive any comments, proposal from the authorities, from Ministry of Public Education and A.Avloniy Research Institutes and other relevant educational authorities to develop and project and put into action. Thank you for your kind attention and also giving me the first floor in this regard. Thank you for your kind understanding. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Tony, for your speech, for your wonderful speech, and also for highlighting the contribution of TICA, Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, to the development of education in Uzbekistan. As you, sir, rightly indicated, Uzbekistan and Turkey are two brother countries, and I'm sure that there are a lot of educational areas that these two countries can collaborate on. Thank you, sir. When it comes to STEM education in public education sector, with the focus on nurturing 21st century skills in school students and building new STEM schools in the country, the support of this organization has been and will be so significant and invaluable. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Hiroki Katayama, Head of Project Administration Unit, to present Asian Development Bank's view and future cooperation with the Ministry of Public Education. Mr. Katayama, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished partners. Thank you very much for having us here. So Asian Development Bank would like to emphasize once again that we really support the ministry's initiative on the reforms and new development strategy for 2022-2026 to improve the quality of the people of the people of the country. The school education must help students acquire different skills such as ICT, science, mathematics, and others. But most importantly, those skills need to be acquired in an integrated manner so that the skills will help build a stronger and technology-driven and knowledge-based economy of the country. One of the sovereign pipelines of ADB at this moment is Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math in Secondary Education Project. The STEM project will introduce integration of different disciplines with practical approach and effective use of ICT. Under the project, it intends to upgrade the pedagogical system, build capacity of teachers and school leaders, create learning, create learning assessment system, and establish data management system. The intended amount will be $100 million, and the preparation is underway with the government. And also, STEM education needs dynamic partnership with many different entities, like we discussed today, academia, civil societies, teachers association, teachers organizations, such. And also, one of the important partners that is private sector. So in this regard, in addition to sovereign lending, ADB has been supporting for the government for preparing a PPP project for build, finance, maintain 16 new public secondary schools in responding to the challenge of shortages of schools. The government resolution is underway, and once the government resolution will be, then the tender will start. With various sovereign and non-sovereign lending modalities and technical assistance and advisory services, ADB will continue to support the government reform agenda even further in this sector. Thank you very much.
Mr. Katayama, thank you very much for your short but very meaningful presentation and speech. And I'm sure that the STEM project that you are going to undertake with the Ministry of Public Education will be a great impulse to focus more on nurturing school graduates with 21st century skills. Thank you, sir. The following key Ministry of Public Education stakeholder, the partner organization, has always been the first to say, yes, we want to be there, and we want to be the part of this event, expressing their relentless support and willingness to help carry out ministry's undertaking successfully. Their latest project is now taking 4 school EFL teachers to ITFL conference in Belfast, Northern Ireland, to represent Uzbekistan. Please welcome the Director and the Deputy Director of British Council in Uzbekistan, Ms. Denise Waddingham and Mr. Minigulawa. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here and all our friends and partners. So our work with the Ministry of Public Education is really centered around our 2020 5-year Memorandum of Understanding, which broadly seeks to further cooperate on whole public education reform, and in particular to raise the standards of English teaching and learning in Uzbekistan and the development of English skills among teachers and students. We've contributed to developing national standards for English teaching, reform of pre-service teacher training, and recently in collaboration with the Ministry, the development of the National English Curriculum Delivery Strategy. We're very proud to co-chair the English Reform Steering Group with the Ministry, to ensure all stakeholders collaborate together and learn from best practice. It's something we've discussed quite a bit already this morning about the need to be working together, to be having regular conversations. And we very much hope that we will continue to co-chair the steering group in the long term. Last year, we shared the University of Leicester research that we commissioned into English teaching in public secondary schools in Uzbekistan. And in response to this, we developed our online teacher community as part of our Future English program. And this is a continuous professional development community for teachers in partnership with A.Avloniy Institute. And we now have around 2,500 teachers who have completed 3 major courses under the Future English OTC. And the initial results have been really encouraging. From the first cohort, we had a 61% response rate from the teachers surveyed. And teachers reported a strong sense of community, with 89% of respondents saying they expected to stay in contact with some of the colleagues met through the OTC. 90% of teachers agreed or strongly agreed that they acquired new knowledge and skills throughout the program. And 94% of teachers agreed or strongly agreed that their teaching practice will improve as a result of taking part in the OTC. We're pleased that these new courses are aligned to the new National Continuous Professional Development Programme in Public Education, and we're delighted to be working with the Ministry and A.Avloniy Institute to make these courses happen. The OTC will continue to be an important part of our program over the next years, and we plan for 4,000 teachers to take part in the next 12 months. We're also very interested in the role of language assessment in policy, curriculum, and classrooms, and have been keen to ensure shared understanding of assessment as an integral part of reforms in language education policy. Many of you here took part in the New Directions Series Assessment Conference that we ran last November, and this was an opportunity to engage with major stakeholders and devise a clear strategic vision and shared understanding of assessment as an integral part of reforms in language education policy in Uzbekistan, and to achieve a shared understanding of the need to align national standards and curriculum, delivery and assessment for better learning outcomes. We will continue to collaborate with the Ministry and the National Testing Centre around delivering English tests for teachers that will develop capacity and offer new incentives for teachers. We've also recently completed an English impact survey. This is understanding the English level of 15 to 16-year-olds in a sample of 121 schools across the country. And using the British Council's APTIS test, we'll find out their English proficiency level according to the Common European Framework. And this will allow us to see how this age group compares to their peers globally, as well as giving us a starting point for informed and evidence-based language policy decisions. Once we know their levels and have a clear understanding of where they need to get to, we'll be able to develop a program of support for the future, and we'll retest using APTIS to measure their improvement. And our report on this will be published over this summer. You've already mentioned, but one of the British Council's roles is to facilitate engagement with key UK stakeholders and policymakers, and as well as Ayatefl, which we are delighted we have a Uzbekistan delegation to visit. We also have an Uzbekistan delegation for the Education World Forum next month in London, and this is a meeting of ministers of education globally. And Usman, I'm very glad you're going to be joining me on the delegation. So I'm sure that these kind of events, the Ayatefl, the Education World Forum, will really be useful in bringing about new connections and linkages with international networks and communities. So plenty of work going on, very exciting, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paddingham, for being with us today and for also highlighting the contribution of the British Council to English EFL curriculum development and also to the professional development of EFL teachers in Uzbekistan. Thank you, ma'am. Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know that on 5th April of this year, the President held a meeting with the Ministry of Public Education and reviewed how the reforms are undertaking now. So the President on this day has set clear vision as to how to nurture future pedagogical staff and connect it with their future professional and career development by stressing the experience of Singapore. Joined with us today from Singapore online, the CEO and the founder of Six Clouds company, Mr. Richard Woon, and his colleagues to express their vision as to how they can add to the improvement of education of quality at our Uzbek schools. Mr. Benton, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hello, colleagues. Good afternoon. Just give me a minute to share my presentation. Okay. So my name is Mr. Noel Low, right? I'm presenting on the behalf of Mr. Richard Woon. So good morning, Minister and esteemed colleagues. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with you what we have developed at Six Clouds today. We believe that what we have will help to move public education forward and to make it more closely aligned with the 21st century education for all the different stakeholders involved. To begin, we ask ourselves, what is a 21st century education? In short, we believe it to be one that is able to respond to the economic, technological, and societal shifts that happens around us. It is an education that prepares children for jobs in the future that have yet or may not yet exist. Now, the future carries a lot of uncertainties. How then do we teach children how to solve the problems that have not yet existed? We need to equip the children with problem-solving skills. Incidentally, these are also the skills that are required of a 21st century learner. I would like to reference the development of Singapore's mathematics as it is closely related to what we have to share today. Singapore has developed a unique process of teaching children I'm sorry, there is some technical issues.
Mr. Benson, maybe you will just keep the presentation to not the full screen, but the ordinary one when you share the screen that the menu pops up.
Yeah.
Not to go to the full screen. When you make the full screen, the picture starts to blur. So maybe without going full screen.
Is this
yes,
okay?
This way. Yes, this way. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Singapore has developed a very unique process on teaching children how to visualize and represent the problem in a simple way, such that the process of finding the solutions become clearer and more easily understood to them. Right? In this framework, we can see that the desired outcomes mirror, right, what we deem to be the 21st century learner. There are different processes and skills, and of course, metacognition that's involved. The process of finding the solution is as critical to the solution itself. Now, let me share with you some of the snapshots that we have in our learning program that shows you how we take the children through the process of learning. It is very colorful and it's very well received by the children because it's presented in a very fun way and it's in their environment of being digital natives. Across the different grades as well, right? There have been very, very good feedback on the learning program. Now, the animation breaks down and represents problems using different diagrams, tables, models, etc., and challenge these children to think critically and to find the solution. I have to stress again that the process of finding the solution is as critical as finding the solution itself. And going through this process, they become excited and it allows them to share what they have learned with their friends, their parents, and teachers. Now, the extension of these skills involved can and should be applied beyond to the subject matter. And this is exactly what helps prepare children to tackle the problems that they have yet to face. Now, how do we know this works? With a very, very small population in Singapore, the number of talent will definitely or naturally be very small. but with very good processes, we can achieve good levels of success. We will be looking to supporting teachers' professional developments when they use our content, from the preparation of lessons to the delivery of the content, and of course, assessments or evaluations. In this way, teachers can increase the tools in their educational toolkit as well. How do we look to do this? Is that we will look to form a center of excellence. We will look to pilot this and therefore make it scalable and roll it out to the rest of public education to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to experience this joy of learning. We want every parent in Singapore to be, in Uzbekistan, to be proud of the public education system and knowing that their children attending public schools will definitely have a brighter future and then contribute back to the country's economy. We will be submitting an application for every child to have an access to our learning programs, and your assistance is greatly appreciated. With everyone's support here, we believe this partnership with the Ministry of Public Education will achieve the vision that is set by the President of Uzbekistan and the Ministry of Public Education. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. We know that Singapore has been one of the top achievers when it comes to PISA and other international assessment programs. So we really want to explore what lies behind such success. And I know that one of the key factors here is teachers. So how Singapore is developing, nurturing its teachers is one of the key areas that the Ministry of Public Education would like to know more about, and hopefully will collaborate with our Singaporean partners. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Our next speaker is from one of our key partners that has been supporting the development of assessment models on one of the school subjects. Please welcome Mr. Hasegawa Hiroyuki, Project Formulation Advisor, Social Sector Development from JICA. Mr. Hasegawa-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for introductions. I'm glad to be here today. Well, actually, I was on home leave until yesterday. Last night, 9:30, I got a phone call from my senior officer that we have very important meeting today. So I'm still fresh and glad to make a presentation about JICA's cooperation in public education. Next slide, please. Okay, we have 4 pillars in our cooperations. The first one is applying Japanese test model in mathematics for academic achievements. Second one is eliminating regional disparities in science and mathematics. Third one is strengthening practice of inclusive education. And the last one is human resource development for young officials, including in educational sectors. So I would like to make a brief presentation of each pills. The first one is Japanese test models mathematics for academic achievement. So we are having this project with A.Avloniy and research institutions with support of KEI Advance Japan. And this is under private-public partnerships. And this project has already started since 2021, and which will continue until next year's November. And we are supporting of improvement of tests in mathematics from grade 8 to grade 10 of public schools, assessing 14,000 students in 40 schools. And we also make recommendations on building transparent and objective mechanisms for assessing academic achievements. And dynamics of this project is our Japanese partners, KEI Advance, know how to share best practice on elaboration of test items and analysis of test result. So we shall contribute to achieve top 30 ranking in PISA in 2030s. Second pillar is eliminating regional disparities in science, mathematics. This is also under private public partnership project. We are working together with Gakusho companies. Gakusho is textbooks published company in Japan. In this project, we shall improve regional disparity of education and lack of educational materials in Uzbek language. Also, localizing proposed Japanese educational materials is called Digital Drill Workbook for secondary school students in mathematics. In addition, promote a business to provide supplementary educational materials in Uzbek with low price and high qualities. We are working together with A.Avloniy Research Institute, also education centers. The third one is inclusive educations. We are working together with Ministry of Preschool Education and Public Educations. The project title is Project for Strengthening Practice of Inclusive Education in Preschool Education. So implementation period is already started from since last year to 2024. In our project, we are supporting mainstreaming of inclusive education in preschools and primary schools by dispatching Japanese experts and conducting TOTs, training of trainers, teachers of kindergartens, and also teachers of primary schools year-round, to aim smooth transition from special needs education in preschool to inclusive education in primary school. The last one is human resource development for young officials. So this is a scholarship to obtain master's or PhD degrees for the future policy making in the fields such as education, pedagogy, or public finance and business environment. We shall dispatch in total 18 Uzbek young officials each year, and we have 2 slots in educations. And this year, one officer from education center was selected, and she will study in Japan. Now, I shall talk about further cooperation. This is to be discussed more details, and some ideas are already proposed by A.Avloniy Research Institute. They have 2 proposals. The first one is improvement of school management and teaching methods, such as total management, includes management of school administration, teachers, curriculums based on Japanese experience. Also, strengthening and standardization of lessons by hybrid style, face-to-face and online. The second proposal is improvement of teachers' capacity and teaching methodology through introduction of Japanese test model to measure achievement in all science, math subjects. So not only mathematics, but also chemistry, physics, biology. They are requesting JICAM to support in this sense. However, we need to discuss more with developing partners to elaborate the contents of this proposal. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us and supporting the reforms taking place in the public education sector, and also highlighting the project that A.Avloniy Research Institute, in collaboration with K Advanced and the support of JICA, is taking place. Thank you, sir. I would like to now give the floor to our final organization, which has been supporting the vet education in Uzbekistan represented by Mr. York Podelka, who is now in Germany and said that he will be online joining us. And also Ms. Yelena Sabirova, National Coordinator of Education Project, GIZ Office Tashkent. So first of all, allow me to check whether Mr. Podelka is online, because he said that he will deliver opening remarks online, and then we'll give the floor to our Ms. Sabirova. Thank you. Mr. Podelka, if you are here with us online, I'd like to give the floor to you first before moving on to Mrs. Sabirova. We understand the situation and the time difference between Uzbekistan and Germany. Therefore, allow me to give the floor to Ms. Sabirova. Thank you. Yes, and the presentation.
Добрый день, уважаемые дамы и господа. Я очень рада, что нас пригласили на этот замечательный митинг, поскольку GIZ является крупным поставщиком услуг в области международного сотрудничества в целях устойчивого развития и международной образовательной деятельности. И я разбавлю языковой микс, и моя презентация подготовлена на русском языке. И в большей степени я буду говорить о том проекте, который представляю я в качестве национального координатора. Тем не менее, GIZ имеет 50-летний опыт работы в самых разных областях, включая экономическое развитие, содействие занятости, сферу энергетики и окружающей среды, а также мир и безопасность. Где моя презентация? Ага. Наш проект является билатеральным проектом и начал свою деятельность в Узбекистане с конца 2021 года. И проект направлен на создание устойчивой занятости и расширение возможностей получения доходов для населения Узбекистана и таким образом прямое ощутимое улучшение условий жизни населения. Проект наш называется «Поддержка процесса реформирования и модернизации в системе профессионального образования Узбекистана». Ключевая проблема, которая поднимается проектом, это профессиональные компетенции выпускников профессиональных школ, колледжей и техникумов не соответствуют потребностям рынка труда. Мы столкнулись с такой ситуацией, что рынок труда бежит гораздо быстрее, чем создаются условия для получения той или иной профессии. Основная цель проекта, как в конечном итоге, да, это реформирование профессионального образования, подготовка квалифицированных кадров в Узбекистане в соответствии с потребностями экономики в отдельных ключевых отраслях промышленности. То есть мы, в частности, работаем в текстильном секторе, и те учебные заведения, которые представлены в текстильном секторе в области профессионального образования, начиная от профессиональных школ, колледжей и заканчивая техникумов, где потенциальные учащиеся могут получить профессии трех уровней, да, начиная от 3 уровней квалификации, от 3-го и до 5-го уровня квалификации. Ну и как бы основной целью проекта также является создание устойчивой занятости и улучшение возможности получения дохода населения Узбекистана для достижения прямого и ощутимого улучшения условий жизни населения, которые ориентированы на обучение и устойчивый рост для создания доступных рабочих мест. В плане создания доступных рабочих мест мы понимаем подготовку кадров с самого начального как бы процесса от оценки их потребностей и до создания условий для получения рабочих мест. Цели проекта тесно связаны с факторами успеха, которые определены в позиционном документе БНЦ. БНЦ – это Федеральное министерство экономического сотрудничества и развития, откуда мы черпаем финансовые средства. И как бы лозунг БМЦ «Содействие профессиональному образованию и обучению, формируя будущее». В рамках нашего проекта мы нацелены на продвижение диалога между государственным и частным сектором. Будем стремиться создания процесса по разработке учебных курсов, которые ориентированы на рынок труда. Также мы планируем инвестировать в начальную непрерывную подготовку кадров профессионального образования и обучения, а также разработку единых стандартов. То есть предполагается и такое материально-техническое оснащение пилотных колледжей в текстильной сфере, и создание новых профессий или же пересмотр существующих профессий с учетом потребностей рынка труда и современных технологий, которые существуют в мире, и начиная с разработки стандартов, как профессиональных стандартов, так и стандартов качества процесса обучения. Ну и вызовы, которые стоят перед нашим проектом на сегодняшний день и которые могут быть рассмотрены вместе с Министерством народного образования, это профориентация к профессиональному обучению, которое на сегодняшний день очень слабо развито и требует системного подхода. И в этом направлении мы могли бы сотрудничать с Министерством народного образования, поскольку потенциальные участники профессиональных курсов – это школьники, которые сегодня учатся в 10-11 классах. И, естественно, профессиональная ориентация их с тем, чтобы они могли ориентироваться на рынке труда и не просто выбрать будущую профессию, а осознанно выбрать будущую профессию, которую они могут использовать для получения какого-то источника дохода на своем жизненном пути. Поэтому этот процесс очень важен. И второе направление, где мы могли бы кооперироваться с Министерством народного образования, это инклюзивное включенное профессиональное образование при условии создания особых условий обучения и с учетом особых образовательных потребностей лиц с ограниченными возможностями, которые должно функционировать на должном уровне, а на сегодняшний день оно не функционирует на должном уровне. И хочу сказать, что на сегодняшний день наш проект рассчитан от 2021 год до 2023 года, но сейчас у нас идет повторная оценка потребностей и будет пересмотр нашего проекта с точки зрения рассмотрения дополнительных возможностей, и в частности создание системы профориентации, которая на сегодняшний день очень важна в сфере профессионального образования и, скажем, не только профессионального образования, но и с целью улучшения качества жизни нашего молодого поколения, чтобы они могли ориентироваться на рынке труда, понять, в каком направлении им двигаться дальше. И профессиональная ориентация будет направлена не только на потенциальных учащихся, но и также на их родителей. Также будет направлена на профессиональные учебные заведения, это профшколы, колледжи и техникумы. И что самое главное, в рамках нашего проекта мы будем внедрять не просто профессиональное образование, но дуальное профессиональное образование, в рамках которого предполагается задействовать предприятия текстильной сферы, которые есть у нас в Узбекистане, где на базе предприятий будет организована практика, которая будет составлять в общем объеме 70%. И предполагается, что учебные заведения будут проводить образовательные курсы в объеме 30%. И поэтому вот этот процесс взаимодействия между профессиональными учебными заведениями, компаниями, которые могут предоставить практику, плюс самими обучающимся, вот эта триангуляция, когда нужно будет осознанно составлять договор между этими тремя компонентами, является очень важным условием. И, естественно, профориентация занимает большое место. И здесь я думаю, что мы с Министерством народного образования обязательно встретимся и оговорим уже в рабочем порядке, каким образом мы можем быть полезны друг другу. Спасибо за внимание.
Спасибо вам огромное.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elena Sabirova, for first of all being with us and for elaborating on the GIAZ project in vocational GIZ project in vocational education sector. I'm sure that this project will help a lot to our vocational education school graduates to find their job and their places in life. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last presentation that's presented for today's big event, significant event. And I should say thank you to all our key donor partner organizations for being with us throughout this journey. Now, with your permission, I would like to give the floor to the First Deputy Minister of Public Education, Mr. Usman Sharifhojayev.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It was a very interesting and useful meeting. And I think all of us informed and maybe understand what kind of plans we can set for the future in general to education sector and especially for the Ministry of Public Education and Schools. If you let me, I will move to Uzbek because we start with Uzbek language. Let's finalize our meeting in our local and government language. Hurmatli ishtirokchilar, barchaga avvalambor ishtirok uchun minnatdorchilik bildirmoqchi edim. Haqiqatdan ham ko'rib turganimizdek, ta'lim tizimida va umuman xalq ta'limi tizimida mahalliy va xalqaro hamkorlarning ishtirokida juda ko'p va kerak ishlar amalga oshirilmoqda, lekin ayrim jihatlarda bu ishlarni xuddi bugungi jarayonga o'xshab birgalikda yig'ilib muhokama qilib olishimiz ularni samaradorligini yanada yuqoriroq darajaga olib chiqishiga va qaysidir jihatlarni qaytarish holatlarini oldini olishga xizmat qilishini tushuntiribmiz. Shuning uchun agarda ruxsatinglar bilan mana bugungi avvalambor yig'ilishni tashkil etib tashabbus qilgan A.Avloniy institutiga minnatdorchilik bildirmoqchi edim va umuman olganda vazirlikni bizni vazirimizni bir g'oyalarini yetkazmoqchi edim sizlarga. Ya'ni imkon qadar albatta har bitta tizimimizda faoliyat olib borayotgan o'zini yo'nalishi bo'yicha tashkilotlarimiz bor. Misol uchun mazmun bo'yicha Respublika ta'lim markazi, psixologiya, kasb bo'yicha tashxis markazi yoki ITSM markazimiz IT yo'nalishi bo'yicha. Lekin barcha jarayonlarni bir xil qolipga solib bu ishlarni tashkil etishimiz menimcha va bu umumiy koordinatsiyaning ichida alohida yo'nalishlarni tashkil etib mazmun bo'yicha moddiy texnik bazani yaxshilash bo'yicha yoki inklyuziv ta'limni yaxshilash bo'yicha olib borsak va har bitta hamkor tashkilotlardan aynan shu guruhlar doirasida birgalikda mini guruhlar doirasida muhokamani tashkil etib uni mana bugunga o'xshagan an'anaviy bo'ladi deb o'ylaymiz. Tadbirlarda muhokama qilib borsak, bu ham xalqaro hamkorlarimizga ham mahalliy hamkorlarimiz mana bugungi kunda hozir bu yerda Maktabgacha ta'lim vazirligi ta'lim sifatini nazorat qilish inspeksiyasining rahbarlari ham bor, boshqa vazirlik idorlarimiz vakillari bor. Eng asosiysi nodavlat notijorat tashkilot vakillarimiz mana Ro'shinikiga minnatdorchilik bildiramiz. Kasb uyushmasini aynan ta'lim yo'nalishi bo'yicha rahbariyati ham shu yerda. Ya'ni umuman ta'lim sohasida olib borilayotgan islohotlarimiz har doim aytamiz, barcha fuqarolarga o'z ta'sirini ko'rsatadi. Chunki bevosita ta'lim tizimida, xalq ta'limi tizimida 7 millionga yaqin odam u yoki bu darajada kirishgan, ya'ni o'qiydi yoki ta'lim oladi yoki dars beradi. Lekin ularni ham o'z navbatida jamiyatdagi o'rnini hisoblaydigan bo'lsak, har birini uyiga xalq ta'limi kirib borishini hisobga oladigan bo'lsak, bu tizim orqali biz jamiyatda o'ziga yarasha o'zgartirishlarni qilishimiz imkoniyati kengroq ekanligini barchamiz tushunib turibmiz. Shuning uchun ruxsatinglar bilan umumiy koordinatsiyani bundan buyog'iga ham mana vazirlik A.Avloniy instituti orqali qilishni bir taklif qilmoqchi edik bizi tomonidan. Albatta, lekin o'zini ichida har bitta yo'nalish bo'yicha alohida guruhlarni tashkil etmoqchimiz va o'zini sohasidan kelib chiqib, xalqaro hamkorlarimizni xususiyatidan kelib chiqib yoki ishtirok etish ishtiyoqidan kelib chiqib, shu guruhlarga vakillarni jalb qilishga tayyor ekanligimizni bildirmoqchiman. Albatta bu tadbirda ishtirok etib, o'z vaqtini ayamasdan kelib, fikrini bildirgan barcha hamkorlarimizga yana bir bor rahmat aytaman. Albatta bugun qisqa vaqt davomida bo'lsa ham juda ko'p rejalarimizni, sizlarning rejalaringlarni ham eshitdik. Vazirimiz tomonidan bildirilgan fikrda yaqin 2-3 yilda xalq ta'limida asosiy urg'u beriladigan ayrim jihatlarni eshitdik. Albatta bundan kengroq va ko'proq ishlarni qilishimiz bizda oldimizda vazifa qilib belgilangan. Shuning uchun ruxsatinglar bilan bugungi davra suhbatiga yakun yasasak va barchalarni tadbirdan keyin tashkil etilayotgan tushlikka taklif qilamiz va bunday uchrashuvlarni doimiy tarzda u yoki bu formatda albatta kerak bo'lsa hattoki onlayn shaklda ham tez o'tkazib boradigan bo'lsak, umumiy koordinatsiya va umumiy ishimizni sifatliroq va natijaga tezroq erishadigan darajada olib borishga imkoniyatimiz paydo bo'ladi. Katta rahmat barchaga ishtirok uchun. Hammanglarni ko'rganimizdan xursandlik. Rahmat.
And now we would like to invite all of you, all our international and local partners to the lunch already laid in the hotel's restaurant. Please. Thank you for your coming. Thank you. And before heading to the restaurant, I think the group photo would be just in time.